Familiar, Book 6, an interlude. Early afternoon sunlight filtered through the trees as the cabin came into view. A cool breeze laden with the scent of salt ruffled their fur as the gentle lull of the ocean reached them. The forest parted into an open field, the sun's warmth enough to stave off the ocean chill as they made the final steps.
Almost there! Still have the piece,
Emmy said. Sonic nodded, placing a hand over his basket protectively.
Good! We should update Tails and Knuckles as soon as we get back! I'm sure Tails will have hundreds of ideas by now!
He chuckled at her words.
Definitely. He had dozens last night.
Of course he did!
Emmy said with a smile as they ascended the stairs. She pulled open the door, ushering him inside. Tails sat at the breakfast bar, kicking his legs absent-mindedly with his head atop his hands when they entered. Knuckles lay on the couch snoring, a hand resting over his chest. Tails looked up, eyes widening.
You're back!
His voice jolted Knuckles awake and he flailed in his blankets as he fell to the floor with a thud. Tails made a face, racing over to help untangle Knuckles from the blankets.
Sorry, Knuckles!
He said sheepishly. Knuckles grumbled but waved him off.
It's fine.
He rubbed his head, turning to face Emmy and Sonic. His eyes widened at the sight of the two of them standing at the door.
Or did you guys get the apples?
Knuckles jumped up to inspect the contents of Emmy's basket.
I got strawberries! Sonic has the apples!
Emmy raised an eyebrow at Knuckles, who stepped back sheepishly. Sonic held out his basket after removing the cloth-wrapped shard. Knuckles took it hesitantly, as though Sonic would bite him, before digging into its depths.
These are perfect!
He said, shooting Sonic a quick grin before racing into the kitchen.
I love to prepare the crust first.
He mumbled to himself, plucking out bowls from the cupboards. Sonic blinked at the sudden change in demeanor, watching Knuckles with a frown. Emmy shook her head fondly, placing down her own basket on the counter before turning to Tails.
We found another memory.
Tails' eyes widened.
Really?
He asked. Sonic nodded, unwrapping the shard reverently, holding it out for Tails to see. Tails clapped his hands excitedly.
This is great! What did you remember this time?
Something a little happier.
Sonic said with a grin.
We're setting up the orchard!
Tails laughed.
Oh, I'm sure it was funny then.
Sonic nodded.
You and Knuckles were messing around while and I took a break.
Tails hummed.
I think I remember that. It was a while ago. Oh.
Yeah, it was nice.
Sonic said, a soft smile pulling at his lips.
I have another idea, actually.
Tails uttered. Sonic tilted his head curiously, gesturing for Tails to continue. Tails grinned.
It's a surprise, but it's on another planet.
He said teasingly. Sonic's eyes widened comically.
Another world.
He asked. Tails smirked.
Yep, we need to run an errand there, but you'll have to wait until tomorrow to see it.
Sonic pouted.
Fine, I'll put this away.
He drifted over to his room, wrapping the mirror shard back up in its blanket. Kneeling by the basket in the corner, Sonic gently placed a second shard in alongside the first one, the blanket separating the two. Even if he could rewatch them yet, he had a feeling keeping them would come in handy. The thought of someone else taking them left him unnerved. Sonic pulled off his red jacket, placing it on a hook on the back of his door. He hesitated at the door hand on its edge as he stared at the jacket. It had only been 2 days, but it felt like an eternity since he had seen his family. He had plenty of updates for them. Nodding to himself, he left his room, dropping down onto the couch by Tails.
I think I'll go home for a couple hours.
He said. Tails looked at him for a moment before nodding.
Sure, just be ready for tomorrow.
He
I was born ready. I'll be back in a few hours.
Tails placed a hand over his arm before he could stand fully.
Here.
He said, placing something cool into Sonic's hand.
You'll need them.
Sonic looked at the 2 rings in his hand, silver with golden patterns adorning them. He smiled, placing them on his wrist. Whoa.
Thanks.
Tails nodded, but still held his arm.
Want me to wait for you at the gate?
Sonic shook his head.
I'll remember the path back. Besides, I can make it here in minutes.
Tails chuckled, letting him go.
That you can stay safe.
Sonic nodded, standing fully and stretching. He drifted towards the door when Emmy stopped him with a hand over his shoulder.
You'll be back in a couple hours.
She asked, eyes shining with concern.
I will.
He promised. Emmy nodded.
I'll check up on Knuckles while you're gone if it makes you feel better.
Sonic's shoulder slumped in relief.
Could you? Thanks. Maybe I'm just a little paranoid.
Emmy smiled, squeezing his shoulder once before dropping her hand.
It never hurts to check. See you later.
Sonic waved to Knuckles as he left, but the Echidna was too busy slicing up apples. His shoes sunk into the sand as he walked along the beach, stopping a few minutes away from the house and prying one ring from his wrist.
Home.
He murmured, shutting his eyes as he tossed the ring into the open air. Light lit up the backs of his eyelids momentarily, and he covered his face with an arm. Cringing and stepping backwards, he opened his eyes once it had faded. The portal wide before him. On the other side, the cliff sat, a few meters of the rock followed by an open view of the town. Sonic grinned, stepping through without hesitation. A cool wind ruffled his fur as Sonic exited the portal, causing him to shiver and wrap his arms around himself. He cursed himself for leaving his jacket behind. Dropping his arms as the air stilled, Sonic took a deep, appreciative breath of home. The scent of pines and earth filled his soul and he grinned. While the island felt like a home, he had few memories linked to the place. Green Hills had it beat easily. His family and friends were here. Sonic took off down the trail at a walk, taking his time to appreciate being back on Earth. He brushed his hands against the leaves reaching across the trail as he passed by, closed his eyes as another pine-filled breeze wafted through the air. Gray smoke entered his vision all too soon, pouring gently out from the chimney. Sonic grinned, excitement pumping through his veins like electricity as he turned his walk into a jog. His family was so close, he could feel Maddie's warm arms around him already. Sonic jumped up the steps onto the back porch, pausing at the door to knock. Maddie had instilled in him many times to be patient and polite. To tear the door open would be an insult to her teachings.
Coming.
A soft voice called out from inside. Sonic took a step back, holding his hands behind his back as a smile graced his lips. He bounced on his heels as he waited. The door opened slowly, Maddie peeking out curiously. Her eyes widened and she ripped the door open.
Sonic!
She kneeled down, knocking the breath out of him as she pulled him into her arms. Sonic wheezed a laugh, sneaking his arms around her waist.
Hey, Mom.
Maddie squeezed him tighter before pulling back to smile at him. Her eyes sparkling, she blinked as though coming back to herself.
Oh, come inside. It's freezing out here. I'll make us some tea. You have to tell us everything.
Sonic chuckled, taking her hand as she led him inside. Warmth muffled the cold from outside and Sonic sighed in relief.
Tom is in the living room watching TV.
Maddie said, patting his shoulder before drifting over to the kitchen and flipping on the kettle. Sonic grinned, sneaking into the living room. True to her word, Dom sat on the couch, head tilted back as soft snores left his mouth. The fire poured onto the mantel, warmth gushing into the room in soothing waves. You ate murmurs from the television muffled Sonic's footsteps as he crept closer. sopping before Tom, bending his knees. Sonic leaped onto Tom's stomach, wrapping his arms around him as water bubbled up his throat.
Sonic.
Tom pulled him closer, resting his head over his grills carefully. Sonic nuzzled into Tom's shoulder with a sigh.
Hey, Dad.
When did you get back, you asshole?
Sonic chuckled, moving back and falling onto the couch beside him. Then
Just now. I'll tell you guys everything when Maddie gets here.
Tom frowned, looking around and only just noticing the lack of his wife in the room.
Where's she?
Making tea.
Sonic said. Tom nodded.
You better tell us every little detail,
Maddie entered the room before Sonic could reply, a tray holding a cup of tea for each of them in their own mugs. Sonic's was the one with Blue Devil written on it. Tom had gotten it for him for his birthday. Sonic took the proffered tea with a nod of appreciation, blowing gently on the pooling steam as he cupped his hands around the mug, banishing the remaining ice in his hands.
So?
Tom prompted him, raising his eyebrows. Sonic took a sip of his tea, nodding to himself at the sweet dash of honey Maddie had stirred in for him. She knew him too well.
I've found a way to recover my memories.
Sonic began, placing his tea down on the coffee table. Maddie's eyes widened in delight.
That's great, sweetie.
Sonic smiled.
I'm really happy. It's just a little.
What do you mean?
Tom asked.
Well, we're finding these shards of a mirror around the Island. Whenever I look into them, I see a memory from the place.
Maddie scrunched up her face in thought.
That is odd.
I'm keeping them back in our cabin.
Maddie perked up at that.
You guys have a cabin.
That's fancy for a gremlin such as yourself.
Tom added with a snicker. Sonic shot him a look.
Well, tell us all about the Island.
Maddie said, leaning closer in anticipation. Sonic smiled, curling up into her side when she opened her arms.
Sure, so we built the cabin when we first moved there.
The warmth of the fire and the weight of arms wrapped around him lulled Sonic into a light doze once he had finished talking. Tom had left on an urgent call, patting Sonic on the head and waving goodbye to him and Maddie. Maddie had begun humming a tune to him not long ago, her soothing voice almost enough for him to drift off completely. He couldn't say, though. Sonic sat up with a sigh, causing Maddie to halt her melody.
Up already, sweetheart.
Sonic nodded.
I can't stay. I need to learn more about my past.
Maddie hummed in understanding.
Of course. I'm glad you came to visit us, sweetie.
She smiled down at him warmly before her gaze hardened.
You'd better come visit again soon.
I promise I will.
Sonic said, hopping off of the couch and stretching. Maddie stood as well, offering her hand.
All right, I'll walk you outside.
Sonic smiled, intertwining their fingers as they walked to the door. The cold jolted him out of the warm haze he had fallen into, and Sonic grumbled.
It's a bit chilly, I know.
Maddie said with a laugh. Sonic paused on the porch, a thought nagging at him.
Hey, can I ask you something?
Maddie's face hardened and she kneeled before him.
Of course, what's bugging you?
Sonic smiled, placing a hand over her cheek to soothe her.
I'm fine. It's just I wanted to get your opinion on something. One of my old friends has been acting a little odd since I returned.
Maddie frowned.
He won't make eye contact with me, and I feel like he's avoiding me.
Maddie pursed her lips in doubt.
Well, you did mention that they believed you were dead, right?
Sonic nodded.
Maybe he needs time to process that you're still alive. These things take time, sweetheart. Not everyone can adapt quickly. Give him some time to sort through everything and I'm sure it'll work out.
Sonic let out a breath, his shoulders relaxing as a weight left his chest.
Okay, thanks, Mom.
Maddie's face softened and she drew him into one last hug.
Stay safe out there, sweetheart.
I will.
Sonic promised, squeezing her tightly before they
I'll visit again soon.
I'm holding you to that.
Maddie said, a teasing smile on her face as Sonic hopped down the steps, pulling the ring from his wrist. He turned around to stick his tongue out at her, eliciting bright laughter from her chest. Sonic grinned, waving back to her before turning to face the forest. He closed his eyes as he thought of the island, of the forest Tails had taken him to the first time he had visited.
The island.
He whispered, throwing the ring into open air, a whoosh on several leaves whipping at his face later, and the portal stood before him, its silver glow akin to the moon.
Hi, Mom.
Sonic called back to Maddie, waving once more.
Bye, love you.
Maddie replied, hands clasped together under her chin as she watched him step through the portal. It shut behind him faster than the gold ones usually did, drawing Earth's light with it. Shadows crawled towards him from the trees as the sun settled in for the night, the air still and cool around him. Sonic shivered in distaste, turning towards where Tails had led him, towards his second home. He took a deep breath in before promptly sneezing.
Darn flowers.
He muttered, racing off down the trail. The cabin emerged within minutes. Much to his relief, exhaustion had begun to creep up on him, dragging down at his bones with lead shackles. Sonic slowed down to a jog as he neared, ascending the steps two at a time before pulling open the door, slipping back into warmth.
Sonic!
Tails called out, waving to him from his place on the floor in the living room. Emmy sat on his other side, a puzzle between them. She turned to him with a bright smile, waving with a piece between her fingers.
Welcome back!
You just missed dinner.
Sonic turned at the row voice, blinking in surprise. Knuckles had addressed him. He still wasn't looking at him, rather stirring a seeming bowl of stew. But Sonic would take the small achievement.
You.
Knuckles said, pushing it closer to him. Sonic smiled, sitting at the kitchen counter. Knuckles turned away quickly, crouching down by the oven with mitts on. He pulled out a pie from the oven, its crown glistening and golden.
Thanks.
Sonic said, digging into the stew. He sighed in content as it warmed up his cold, tired bones. Knuckles turned to smile at him before he set about cleaning up the kitchen. Sonic leaned forward to watch him once his bowl was empty. Maddie had been right. Knuckles just needed time. He had been worrying over nothing once more. Emmy sat down beside him, Tails taking her other side and leaning his head on his hand, dozing softly.
I didn't sense anything weird.
Emmy said softly, nodding to where Knuckles was collecting plates. Sonic hummed.
I think I was wrong. I'm glad, though.
Me too.
Emmy agreed. She yawned loudly, before joining Tails in leaning forward on crossed arms to doze. Sonic shook his head fondly, patting her on the shoulder as his own eyelids threatened to slip shut. He jumped as Knuckles declared that dessert was ready, setting down plates with seeming pie upon them, caramelized apples spilling from the sides and a large swirl of whipped cream accompanying it. He grinned, taking the proffered fork with a murmur of thanks. Tomorrow, he would have new worries, no doubt, but for tonight, his chest was unburdened, heart light and stomach full.